Hey y'all, welcome to this week's 10-Minute 2-Tip Tuesday. I'm your host, Amelia Borland, occupational therapist and owner and founder of Higher Standards Caregiver Training. And you may have guessed it because I'm always excited, pretty much about talking about this stuff. And I'm always excited to bring you the tips today on 10-Minute 2-Tip Tuesday. And this Tuesday is no exception. So to give you a quick rundown, if you are new to 10-Minute 2-Tip Tuesday, I'm going to give you two super valuable tips. The first is for caregivers, and the second is for caregiving organizations. Also wanted to thank a few folks out there, you know who you are, for the very awesome feedback that you gave me on last minute's 10-Minute 2-Tip Tuesday. I always love, believe it or not, I actually do this because I genuinely think that this information is valuable for people to have, and I want it to make people's lives better. So thanks to those folks who reached out to me after last week's 10-Minute 2-Tip Tuesday to let me know about some really awesome things that happened based on the information that I gave last week. So anyway, thanks guys. So before we get started, as always, this is for educational purposes only. It's not a substitute for health or medical advice. It's not a substitute for a therapeutic relationship. So if anything that I say reminds you of someone or something or some situation where you think a person needs to be assessed or addressed by a licensed healthcare provider, then please make sure you're advocating for that to happen, as this is really and truly for educational purposes only, y'all. Okay. Tip number one for today. So been talking quite a bit about folks with dementia, things that we can do for folks with dementia. I thought we'd go ahead and continue along that vein for today's 10-Minute 2-Tip Tuesday. And I want to talk, rather than like a very specific tip, which last week was like pretty specific, but rather than a super specific tip today, I want to talk about a very important concept in supporting the safety, the independence, the participation as much as possible of people who have dementia. And that concept is familiarity. So like if you've taken the course on dementia at Higher Standards Caregiver Training, then you know that familiarity is one of the core concepts of the kind of care modeling that I use to teach about dementia care. And the importance of keeping things familiar really can't be overstated. So a lot of times what happens is someone with dementia can really appear to be functioning very smoothly. They can appear to like they don't necessarily have that many deficits. And then all of a sudden, when they're placed in a novel situation, or they're asked to do something new, or perhaps, mom or dad has to move to a memory care unit or something like that, then all of a sudden it appears like the dementia is much worse than it was before. And one of the reasons that can happen is because one of the problems that folks with dementia often experience is they have trouble with new learning and problem solving in new situations. The brain sort of loses its cognitive capacity to do those things. But the things that we've done the same way for a really long time, those things stay in there for a long time. So when we remove people from familiar situations or familiar circumstances or familiar environment, then suddenly all of their deficits from dementia are revealed, and they have a lot more trouble focusing. Now, sometimes in a clinical sense, we might do that on purpose to see what someone's true deficits really are. But when we're talking about a caregiving sense, when we're talking about really truly trying to provide and support the participation of that person for as long as possible, to keep that person as happy as possible for as long as possible, right? Because it's really frustrating to be in a situation that you can't figure out. I mean, super frustrating, right? So we want to try to support things and support that participation, support, calmness and interaction, and continuing to do things by allowing people to do it in a familiar way, as long as that way is safe, right? So that's really the tip for today. Again, not super specific, but thinking about this very, very important concept of familiarity and keeping things familiar when we're caring for people with dementia in order to allow them to participate, reduce frustration, things like that. Like I said, this is one of the core concepts that I teach in the dementia caregiving course at Higher Standards Caregiver Training. So really, really important to keep in mind. Okay, second tip for caregiving organizations. Okay, so I just read the most, honestly, it's a great article. I just reposted it on LinkedIn. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, I just reshared this article by, I hope I don't mess up his name because I don't know him personally, but I would love to, because I thought this article was amazing. Stephen Vaccaro, and I'm really sorry if I messed up your name, but I want to give some credit where credit is due. Awesome, awesome article. It's about elevating the role of home caregivers and, really treating them like the incredibly valuable assets that they are. So take a look at my feed if you're looking for that article. I reposted it. I reshared it earlier today on LinkedIn. So anyway, though, so this article, of course, is talking about all the things that I'm just like, my brain is on fire about all the time, right? But it was the inspiration for the tip today for caregiving organizations. And I want to kind of hone in on this idea of caregiver turnover, because a lot of times if people are reaching out to me with and they want training, one of the things that they're concerned about is caregiver turnover. And of course, we know that the quality, the frequency, the accessibility of things like caregiver training impact turnover. But a lot of times, okay, so here's the tip. Don't be mad. This is more of a question for you. This is a question for you to mull over if you are the leader or owner of a caregiving organization and you're dealing with high turnover. And it's not just about training, right? Even though that's what I do primarily. I do caregiver training, but it's not just about that, right? Here's the question. If you're looking at high caregiver turnover, what are you doing? What are you bringing to the table to change that situation? Because, and turnover is complicated. There's so many things that go into the level of turnover that you might be seeing in your organization. And of course, that can be worth a deeper dive and a deeper conversation. But ultimately, you have to think about, there is a really high demand for the caregivers that you're trying to hire and that you're trying to keep right now. So what are you doing that's different from the organizations around you? What are you doing to let your caregivers know, yeah, I care about you. I want to invest in you as a human being. I want to make sure that you're happy at work. Because we can't all be doing the same thing and expect to get better results, if that makes sense. So maybe not the most helpful tip. Sorry, guys. Not a direct tip, at least, but sometimes the most important thing to do is to get our wheels turning, get our brain moving, get those creative juices flowing and think, okay, well, what am I doing? How do I differentiate myself? Not just as someone providing care, but how am I differentiating myself as someone who is hiring these caregivers and trying to keep them in the organization? Obviously, if you have questions about how we help support that at Higher Standards Caregiver Training, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, that's it for me today, guys, for 10-Minute Two-Tip Tuesday. I hope that you enjoyed it. If there are any specific topics anyone wants to hear about, I'd be happy to entertain those. You can leave a comment, send me a message, whatever it is. Until next time, guys, please stay healthy, stay well, and most of all, take care. Bye, y'all.